Gentlemen, what a smooth transition we have.
Ooh, look at that.
That was sexy.
That was hot. I loved it. Guys, we really upped our production value for this. We have two of you.
What? Why?
What?
What
Why?
the?
What?
This is the craziest thing I've ever seen.
Okay. Okay, so we are going to start with the top, which is Chris. Chris, give me a quick... What character are you playing?
So I am playing Valerian Alstrom, the halfling rogue, and currently I'm thinking about multi-classing into warlock, just thinking ahead, but right now he's a level 1 rogue. He's about 3'2", 43 pounds, and he's about 40 years old, so he's into adulthood. I mean, halflings live to be about like 150 years old, so he's young on the general scale of halflings, but into his adulthood at 40 years old. He's got an AKA. He goes by the Vulture on the streets because he does have a criminal background, so he's got kind of the alias, and that's kind of what he leaves his mark as the Vulture.
Okay. And Devin, what are you playing?
So I'm playing Templeton. He originally had a last name, and I nixed it. I think I like it better that he doesn't. He's just Templeton. He is a half-orc barbarian. He's 6'4", 300 pounds. He's in his early 20s. I don't think he could properly relay what his actual age is. I'm sure he was probably told it at some point, but he doesn't have the best memory, so he doesn't really remember. But he's in his early 20s. He's very young and inexperienced.
Okay. So we'll head back up top. What's a physical appearance for the Vulture?
Yeah, so I kind of wanted to make, since he's a criminal, I was thinking like, what makes a good criminal? And that's somebody that kind of just blends in. So he has kind of an everyman face. It's kind of tough to pick him out of the crowd. And before I go any further, I do want to compliment our Stonefly on the artwork here. When she showed me Valerian's picture, I was just like blown away. The menacing look that she was able to get in there. But anyways, I had to give props there. But no distinguishing marks or blemishes. Like the one thing he would have is a little earring, one little hoop earring. That's the only kind of embellishment. He does have a good jawline, protruding cheekbones. His hair is a little dirty blonde, some hazel eyes. There's just the idea is that he's easily lost in a crowd. I mean, one, he's a halfling, so he's not very tall, but he looks like all of the other halflings. He just blends in everywhere he goes. Everything is kind of average about his looks. Do you want me to go into like what he wears?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, yeah. So he's got this like tan black leather kind of not armor, but just kind of a upper chest piece. It kind of flares down to cover up his thighs. It's stitched together with fine white thread that kind of borders it all the way around. And then he wears a big black kind of scarf that doubles as a hood and a kind of a face mask if he's kind of making a getaway. He's got big black bracers that he wears, leather black bracers on his wrists. And in the middle of each one of those are a white, milky white diamond. Think like obsidian, but white. And they're kind of marquise shaped in those bracers there that he wears on his arms.
Nice.
Usually found within the hood of his scarf is his pet weasel Raffle. He hangs out in there mostly if he's not like out playing around and stuff like that. But yeah, so that's kind of Valerian's appearance.
Love it. What about Templeton?
So with Templeton, I wanted to capture a couple things. Number one, he's just a hulking mass. Not all muscle. He's bulky, muscular, but also kind of fat. I liked the idea of like he has kind of an innocent appearance to him, but there's some serious danger to him underneath all of that. He's clean shaven. He kind of has a vapid, clueless expression, which our Stonefly has captured beautifully. And from looking at him, you get the sense that he's not that intelligent. He's gentle. He has expressive, icy blue eyes with very thin eyebrows. He has a full mouth of human teeth. He never actually got any tusks from the orc side of his family. He's got a bulbous nose. He has a small wisp of white hair just on the top of his head, kind of like a troll doll. His skin's faded green. He enjoys painting his fingernails. So his fingernails are currently like rainbow colored. He wears a white button-down shirt with a black vest, black slacks, and black leather boots. And his socks are rainbow colored. All of these clothes were given to him by Valerian, which we'll get into that in a minute. But Valerian, did he dress me to like so that we kind of match? Like, because I don't know if we did that on purpose or if that was just kind of coincidence.
It was coincidental. Like when we were bringing our two characters together, that was totally like. I remember when I told you I had black leather with white stitching. You're like, oh, sweet, I have white and black. So it's kind of accidental on that side, but I think it's a great idea to kind of add to it that Valerian, in their travels together, have slowly pieced together this makeshift outfit for yourself. They're not necessarily, they don't go together, but through time they've kind of got rid of the old and then grabbed something new. So it does match. And then that Templeton flare with the socks, a rainbow color. That was definitely maybe a weak point in Valerian where he saw that and purchased it for you.
Well, and I think it's also kind of cool that, like, if you have bought me all these clothes, maybe, like, the socks are the one thing I fucking insisted on. Like,
okay.
And,
right.
you know, and, like, you know, you're putting together, like, this image, right, of, like, this big, giant, hulking freak standing behind this halfling. But like the one thing I was not going to relent on was the rainbow colored socks.
So,
easier battle to give up, like choose your battles kind of thing.
Does Valerian pick Templeton as a partner because one, he's so hulking, two, he could be a protector, and three, he's going to draw more attention?
Yeah. So the way, if we're ready to jump into kind of that part of the backstory,
should we go through our backstory first?
I think we should because
I like that. Okay. I like that.
So, do you want to go first, or you want me to go?
I think it makes sense if you start and then maybe stop where I come in.
Okay. So Valerian is not a good man. He is kind of left to center on the scale of good and evil. He's a criminal. That's what he did. He has faults. He's unskilled. Like he's a decent cat burglar, but relatively unskilled. He doesn't really have a trade or anything other than, you know, stealing other people's hard-earned things. He doesn't really produce anything. He just takes petty crimes. And he would make a decent living by stealing people's trinkets and then selling them on the streets. His thing was he would steal during the daytime. He figured most people are gone at their day jobs. He'd go out, steal. Being that everyman, he can kind of blend in. And that's the way he kind of made his money. So he goes on this midnight job. It's somebody who's going to be out and he can get a decent score in the middle of the night, but he has to do it in the middle of the night. So he goes in and he does that. And his wife, he leaves his wife at home. She's pregnant with child. Goes, makes this job, is not gone very long, and he comes back and he finds that his house, the door is open, and he comes back in and he sees Raffle sitting in the middle of their cold, empty bed, kind of freaking out a little bit. He's starting to put two and two together. He sees, the door is open. He starts tracking footsteps, and he follows what he thinks are his wife's footsteps out to the middle of this opening in a forest. And there, it's kind of he sees this single solitary moonbeam coming down, hitting this boulder. And he sees what he thinks is his wife out on top of it. And he makes his way over there and he sees that it is in fact his wife, and she is dead. All the life was drained from her. Not really murdered by like thieves or ruffians or anything, but rather everything about her was kind of drained and just taken from her. Like just the life force had been kind of removed from her, and she was just really like a shell of a woman at that point. And it was at the feet of her that he prayed for the first time, not really knowing who to pray to or how to pray, but he prayed for the first time and to try to bring her back or at the very least be reunited with her. There's nothing in response, and Valerian ended up sleeping at the feet of his wife Calla there outside in the rock. He shivered all night, not because of the cold, but rather the thoughts of what could have been, like this mistake he made. And then that night, as Valerian drifted asleep, unbeknownst to him, Belial, I hope I'm saying that right, Belial, Belial, visited him, and this will be his warlock patron, seeking to be the answer to his, quote, prayer. Belial burned in his wrists the same Marquise diamond shape that he wears on his bracer, burned into his wrist this mark, and now he wears the bracers to cover that up. That's all that the patron did that first night, was just came down and kind of touched him and gave him those burns and those marks, and he wears those to cover him. Belial will obviously come back. But feeling lost without his wife, he went back to what he knows. Like, his life is kind of ruined, so he's going to go and do what he knows. And he heard rumors of this well-to-do butcher in town, and he began casing his home. And he would come by daily at different times in the day, trying to figure out his routine, just to kind of see when the best time to hit him up would be. And no matter when he came to this house, Valerian saw this gigantic half-orc sitting kind of on the street corner, just sitting there doing whatever Devin will describe. Valerian would engage with him in brief nods and some eye contact. One day, Valerian tossed this huge half-orc, a piece of candy, just as he's walking by, a little butterscotch candy, and just moved about his day. The next day, this orc asked for a piece of candy. That was the first time that Valerian heard him speak. Something wasn't quite right with him. He was a little slow, not all there. Something wasn't matching. Valerian gave him another one and asked him to forget that I was ever here, because the next night was the night I was going to make that hit. And I think that's where I'll pause and hand it over to Devin.
Yeah, so Templeton was the product of a night, shared between a cruel orc warrior and a local human girl that he had pillaged after raiding a village. She escaped in the middle of the night while he was asleep, and 9 months later she gave birth to Templeton. He's a green mass with a kind face. Life was anything but easy for Templeton. The people in the village shunned him because of the implications of his birth. He's the child of the orc that overran the village, or one of the orcs that overran the village. And there's the whole issue with him not being that bright. The neighbors kind of referred to him as like touched in the head, and the other kids would call him names, and nobody would have anything to do with him. He was a monster. And his mother, Marie, worked as a clothes washer, just barely making enough to feed the two of them. When he was 19, having no idea what to do with, he's just living there with her, she became ill. And she told Templeton to go to Waterdeep and find some work on the docks. And Templeton's very obedient. He did as he was told. He took a job on the docks. It lasted half a day because a coworker mocked him and hit him with a bottle. And he flew into a rage and broke the man's arm and was fired. So jobless and homeless and not knowing what else to do, his mother told him to come to town and make money. He just kind of sat on the side of the road and contemplated. He didn't want to disappoint his mom by returning home with nothing, so he just sat there. And occasionally somebody would throw him a copper in his way. And not knowing what else to do, he just kind of sat there and collected them. And then one day he had enough. 3 months later, someone brought him a note. Or he collected all the money he could from the alms and sent it to his mother. About 3 months later, a little boy came to him with a note that said his mother had passed. The only kind person he'd ever known was gone. The only person who'd ever been even halfway polite to him was gone. He cried himself to sleep, and the next morning, still just not knowing what to do, he just continued to sit. And the clothes started tattering and becoming worn just from him sitting in the mud. But eventually, from people giving him alms, he saved up enough copper, and he bought some paper and some paints, and he began to draw very simple finger paintings to passersby, pictures of flowers, stick figures of people with smiley faces and suns with smiley faces. He didn't sell that many. One day, a halfling approached him, and the halfling asked him, "Did you draw this? What? It's like a flower?" And Templeton said, "Yep." He said, "Tell you what, I'm a little short on funds at the moment, but I do have some candy. How's about you give me the pitcher and I give you a piece of candy? And Templeton asked him what kind. And the halfling replied, butterscotch, I think. And Templeton said deal, and the exchange was made. As time went on, the two of them started talking. As Val would walk around this part of town, Templeton was always there selling his finger paintings. And they began to talk. He learned his name was Val. And Valerian was the first person who had said more than 3 words to him in 2 years. And then one night, Templeton's laying in that same spot. He sleeps in the same spot where he sits kind of all day. And he heard a commotion across the street. And I'll turn it back over to Val.
Yeah, so that commotion is me going on this, raiding this butcher's shop. The rear entrance of this butcher shop slammed open, and 2 city constables were wrestling me out of the door. And the constables say, "Caught the vulture red-handed this time. You'll lose your hands for this." And Valerian's responding, "I didn't do nothing. I was hired to do some night work. I was framed." And there's some fear in his voice. And as the guards wrestled Valerian down the street, this is where Templeton comes in. This hulking shadow picked up the pace behind us. And one of the guards got the feeling of being followed and turned around just as Templeton brought, and these are Devin's words, these are great words, Templeton brought his cannonball-sized fist down on the head, killing him instantly. The other guard tried to draw his sword as Valerian stumbled to the ground, watching the massive terror snap the other guard's neck. Templeton stood there breathing heavily, snapped the manacle chain on Val's wrists. Why did you do this?" asked Val suspiciously. Templeton responds,
"You're my friend, and they was hurting you. You have any more of that candy?"
And since then, 2 years later now, we have kind of been tied at the hip in a sense. We're friends. Val would definitely use like air quotes or like a friends question mark at the end of that. He doesn't really know where he sits, but Templeton is definitely...
We're best friends.
Yeah, he portrays that to Templeton for sure. But Val doesn't really know like what void Templeton is filling yet. And I think building this character, that's something that I really want to kind of search out and figure out how Templeton is sitting in his life. And he works for candy, and he likes to play with raffle. He's got these huge fists that when Val's mouth gets him into some trouble, Templeton is usually there to back him up. So I think that's a nutshell of our background, which will make any further information that we give out have it make a little more sense.
Yeah.
I love it. So you guys did say this was in Waterdeep, correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We can skip that one. Obviously, you're just in Waterdeep and you're kind of just hanging there.
It might be a good question to say, what are we still doing in Waterdeep? Yeah? Would you agree, Chris?
Yeah, so a while ago, Bob, you gave us some families of Waterdeep, and we kind of wrote in that now that Valerian's got Templeton, we kind of took up work for the Rosnar family, and we helped them trade gems. So now we're kind of the liaison in between the Rosnars and whoever they're selling the gems to. So that's kind of what we're still doing in Waterdeep. With that, Valerian has got away from the easy cat burgling and more into just being this runner of gems for the Rosnars.
And what's Templeton still doing in Waterdeep? Just hanging with Valerian?
Templeton is doing whatever Valerian tells him to do.
Whatever goes. So
kind of pulling back the curtain about this, when I approached Chris, maybe I'm getting ahead of myself. Yeah, those are kind of background stories. Templeton is doing whatever Valerian wants him to do. Templeton has latched onto him as a person who was kind to him when nobody else was. And Templeton is a very true and honorable kind of person. He's willing to do whatever Templeton needs done. His morals are very much around, this is the person who is nice to me, this is the person who I do things for.
Okay.
Yeah, and that, so I guess, talking about like out of character here, that's what's going to be a challenge to me as a player, and I'll save that. You're going to get to that, so I'll save that. Pin that. We'll get back to it.
Okay. So we'll start with Templeton first this time. What traits really define Templeton?
He's very simple. He is not intelligent.
No, just kidding.
And I don't think so. I don't want this to be like, oh, there's some hidden intelligence there. Nobody's just ever gave him a chance. He's not smart. Okay, he had probably some learning deficiencies, but he's loyal to a fault. I would say, one person is
Obviously.
two people have been nice to him his whole life. His mother and Valerian. And whatever Valerian's motives are, Templeton is, one, not insightful enough to recognize if there is ulterior motives, and two, I don't even know if he would really care. Templeton is very happy to have somebody who is sometimes kind to him and talks to him. So he's loyal. He's very kind. I think outside of whatever goes on with Val, I think he's just a sweetheart. He loves animals. And I think that's kind of his breaking point with Val. If Val ever told him to hurt an animal, I think that would be a hard no. He's not going to do that. He loves animals. He's very childish in his demeanor. I think he just wants everybody to get along and be friends.
Love it. And so what traits really define Val?
So Val, a couple things is the best way to get him to kind of under his skin is tell him he can't do something, like the Marty McFly. Will you call me a chicken? He's going to kind of he's going to puff up a little bit. So that's going to get him into some trouble. He's both arrogant and cowardly, especially now that Templeton's with him. He'll talk some mad shit, but then using his halfling nimbleness, he's going to hide behind and underneath Templeton. And take a look at these fists, guys. You don't want to touch me. So both arrogant and cowardly at the same time. And he will put Templeton in harm's way before himself. Like when it comes to fisticuffs, he's definitely gonna back off big time and push Templeton out there to the front of the stage. Yeah.
We should also say that you have allowed me to use my fists as weapons. And we are playing it like a Warhammer. So 1d6 one-handed, 1d... Is that right? Warhammer, let me see. 1d8 one-handed, 1d10 two-handed. So my fists, my giant cannonball-sized fists are my weapon.
Yeah. Could be great. So yeah, arrogant and cowardly, if that's...
Okay. Love it. So what are... We kind of touched on some of these, any ones that we just maybe didn't. What are some of your flaws? We'll start with Valerian this time.
So it's that arrogance, and this is where the challenge for me as a role player is gonna kind of the rubber meet in the road. Is can I pull this off? And that's a huge fear of mine that I have. Is I have to play an arrogant character. Binks was not, and it was easy for me to play Binks because. I just kind of sit back. I act timid. That's easy, right? Nothing's really bad is going to come from you if you just act timid. But being arrogant and being at the front of the center of attention in these social interactions, that's his flaw. That's going to be where I have to shine as a role player. I'm going to try. But yeah, him just being arrogant and just kind of sticking his foot in his mouth a little bit.
Okay, Templeton?
I mean, obviously loyalty to a fault.
Yeah, we talked about
blind loyalty. The blindest of loyalties. Kind of the same way that, so Val's big challenge or Chris's big challenge in playing Val is playing an arrogant character and a character who kind of falls maybe in the middle of the moral spectrum. For me, it is playing a character who doesn't have his own free will. That was kind of what I was shooting for. And so the challenge for me is going to be to sit back and let everybody else kind of push the game and move it forward. Whereas I'm going to be supportive. I want to build Val's character and I want to make Val's character shine. And I want to make the other characters shine as well by being a support kind of character. Definitely loyalty to a fault.
Yeah, I was going to say playing with you enough, Devin. I know both you and I sitting in the back not taking lead is tough. And every game we've played, we've had to do it.
And I will say that's what I've appreciated about Devin as playing with him is that he's able to take that lead and kind of okay, so this is how you do it. Teaching me how to play essentially, and I appreciate him now kind of taking that backseat and letting some other characters and players kind of not that it would be an issue, but that you're choosing to play a character that is that way. So some other of us are going to have to step up, and I think that's a challenge that we're ready to accept.
Yeah, and I don't think that's a bad thing at all. I think it gives, Kylie, which unfortunately she's not here tonight, and Travis both the availability to expand them front and center. With Tomb of Annihilation, they were both kind of ancillary characters is a good way to put it. To an extent, because they didn't start with the original crew, so they maybe didn't feel as tight-knit as everybody else. But hopefully that's good to go. You guys kind of hit on this already.
We bled into it, yeah.
Yeah. What really sparked the idea for?
Part of it was Xanathar's Guide came out, and so this is like way back. Like we were in Tomb, and halfway through Tomb, I thought of this character. He was actually, even before that, he was going to be my second character if Binks died. Because I was thinking Binks was going to die early. I'll get Binks out of the way, then I'll play this character that I really want to play. And it was with Xanathar's Guide, and they had the Celestial Pact Warlock. And that's a warlock that is healer-based. So that kind of planted the seed, and then figuring out from there. Kylie's character ended up being a healer, so I kind of swapped and went to Fiend, Pact of the Fiend. Warlock instead, so which is totally cool. Same background story, same everything, but instead of being a healer, now I'm just trying to be a damage dealer. So that kind of started. It was Xanathar's Guide, just having that. Oh, this warlock sounds cool. Warlocks are kind of underplayed, and I think I'll do that. So that was it. That was like the number one point.
You just filled in pieces as
and then
information came, and
and that's usually how I build a character. I'll find a class and subclass that I want to play, and then think of a race, and then build out from there. Very rarely do I start with a background story. I don't know why, but that's just the way it goes. But so that's how I started.
Templeton. So
I had this idea of tying my character as completely as possible to somebody else's character. As I said just a minute ago, I've always had characters that were very commanding presences. They always had very commanding presence. And so I feel that not by choice, but I make characters that are very much in kind of the center of the group. And I wanted to try something different this time. I liked the idea of my character completely being there as almost like a fleshing out of somebody else's character. I wanted to be an extension of somebody else's character. So, and Chris had been saying in Waterdeep, my backup character is Warlock. So I was hoping maybe he was going for something kind of dark. And so I messaged him and I'm like, hey, you ever thought about doing like a shared backstory with our characters? And he's like, what did you have in mind? And we start talking about it, and we start figuring out that like what he's doing with this like criminal background fits perfectly with what I wanted to do, which was I get a lot of my ideas from pop culture. So John Steinbeck, I'm drawing a blank on the name of the book. Help me,
Mice and Men.
Mice and Men. George from Mice and Men, right? He's this big bumbling idiot, or even like the Looney Tunes cartoons. the big abomination. I'm going to love him and hug him. I'm going to call him George, which was again a play on Mice and Men. I liked the idea of this simpleton who gets in with not the wrong kind of person, but the person who's going to use his loyalty as against him and take advantage of that. And so as we started talking, it was like, oh, you're a criminal. That's awesome. I had this idea of playing the muscle for a criminal, the dumb muscle that's standing behind the wisecracking, smooth talking criminal, that is just there to pound stuff into grease spots when it needs to be done. And so as we started talking and exploring this idea, it was like, oh, this is perfect. This is everything that I was hoping this would be. Where I could take my character and just basically attach it to somebody else's and be like, I want your character to shine. You know, I want to be there to make your character deeper and more complex and more compelling, more interesting. And then I want to branch out and do that to the rest of the group. I want to give them something that they can play off of, and without ever really taking the spotlight too much, I guess, or being a commanding presence. I want to be in the background painting my nails when it's not my turn to talk. You know, I want to wait for Val to ask me to say stuff. You know, I want to wait for Val to tell me to do something, and when he tells me to do something, I want to do it with the best gusto and excitement that I can.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of how this all kind of started.
Okay, I love it.
I'm gonna call it right now. I'm going out on a limb and saying, like, Devin, you're gonna have the emotional moments to start us off. I think. That's where I'm thinking.
It could happen. Oh, Travis just posted in our private chat, Mimsy from South Park. He's not wrong. But no, I agree. I'm definitely going to be playing in more of the heartfelt side of things, because he is very childlike, and he wants everyone to be friends. I think that's probably, I will be playing in that realm more than I will be in the badass realm, or the, I don't know.
Yeah.
The dramatic realm.
Right. Okay, so next question. What pitfalls do you want to really avoid with these characters? And I think this is going to be tough for both of you.
There are many.
But we'll start with you first, Devin.
Okay, so number one, if you've ever seen Tropic Thunder, and when Robert Downey Jr.'s character says you never go full retard, and I apologize, I'm just quoting the movie.
Go in the movie.
I'm quoting the movie. I do not want this character to be a joke. 100%. This character is not there to be the stupid thing that everybody makes fun of. And if that happens, I'm killing him off. I'm just saying that. Like, his simplicity is a facet of his character. It is not who he is. He is not a caricature. And so that's a pitfall for me, and I think maybe even for the group too, because, you know, he's going to do some things that are kind of funny sometimes, and that's fine. But what I don't want him to do is become like the butt of jokes, or have his simpleness be the thing that defines him. You know, I really want to push myself as a role player. I want to play a character that is multifaceted, that has a lot of flaws, that isn't easy. You know, and so for me, that's a tightrope to walk, of not letting his simpleness be a crutch for me. I'm not going to be playing this up for laughs just because he's simple, you know, or not that bright.
Right.
And it's going to be hard for me to. It's also going to be hard for me to take the back seat. I've said it before. I don't do it on purpose. I just, I just do it. You know, I'm just playing my characters as I would if I was talking to my friends.
Right.
In my own life, I do this a lot with my friends group. I'm kind of the guy at the front, you know, leading the pack kind of thing. And so for me to force myself into a position where I'm taking a back seat is going to be a challenge for me.
Well, okay. And I think to kind of help you out in that, what I'm thinking in my headspace with Valerian is, like, he might throw you under the bus, make you the butt of jokes, but deep down, like, and this is where the whole story arc is gonna hit, I think, is like he cares about Templeton. Otherwise, he wouldn't keep him around. He wouldn't be an asset to him if there wasn't some deep down connection. So that's gonna keep it from being that the butt of the joke and being you know, like you said, going full retard. So
yeah, that's not.
Pitfall with Valerian, I think, is becoming. I don't want him to be the game-breaking asshole or the party-breaking asshole. Like, we've talked about that before. Like, how evil can you play before your party just says, "Hey, screw you. We wouldn't associate with you." Right. So I gotta find where that threshold is and learn how to dance in and out of that. And make it interesting and fun, and that's really going to challenge me as a player. and I'm looking forward to it. I want to take that step as a player. Otherwise, I wouldn't make this kind of challenging character. But I think that's going to be tough for me. But knowing the group, knowing the people I play with is going to help. Knowing that we've gone through a campaign together, like I'm okay with going out on a limb with you guys. I feel safe. I feel comfortable. I think I'm ready for the challenge. But yeah, being too much of an a-hole, or on the other side of that is not playing up to that asshole in this character. Like me as Chris being too timid and not stepping up and playing that character. So that, yeah.
I think it's kind of awesome that, like, I think this is going to play out where, like, you're my backbone and I'm your conscience kind of thing. You know, like if we kind of have shared emotions, I think we're going to see, I think we could see that happen, you know, at some point, you know, where it's like you want to do something wrong and I'm going to talk you out of it, or somebody does something not nice to me and I stand up to them or something, you know, something like that. But
you guys kind of answered the last one too.
We did.
I mean, you guys did a good job. It's much, much appreciated on my end. So, are there any questions that you guys have for me that won't be covered in the Waterdeep portion?
I have one. This may not be covered. It may. If it is, then we can hold off. But because my background is a criminal, I get like a criminal contact. So I'd like to know, like, working for the Rosnar family, can my criminal contact be within that family? And that's who I get some of my underground information. That's how I get the scuttlebutt on the streets, you know?
Yeah, I think so.
So that's my biggest question, is that.
Yeah, I think that would fit mechanically into the game because, and we'll talk about the families here in a little bit. Okay. Each family kind of has their own, you know, good and bad, if you will. But it would make sense that if you've worked for them long enough that you have kind of an agent that will assist you in what you need. Devin?
Nothing for me. I think I'm good. It would be nice if you could tell me. I was looking at the map and I was trying to figure out a small city where Templeton could maybe be from. Okay, let me ask you this. Does the game take place completely in Waterdeep?
100%.
Okay, then never mind. Don't need to know. It's a small village outside Waterdeep.
Yeah, sounds good. All right, so there are two questions for you guys. Yeah. Would you label yourselves as bandits? And this comes from Demon Lord Nem.
I think bandits, no. I think thief, yes. At least early.
What about Templeton? Would Templeton label himself?
I think the correct term at this point is fencer. You know, I think we're into acquiring stolen goods from other thieves and selling them to the Rosnar so that they can... Because so I know we'll talk about in a minute, but the Rosnars, they deal in gems. That's what they kind of deal in jewelry. And so I think we're fencers. I think we don't do the active thieving any longer. We take in what other people have stolen.
Okay.
And then give that to the Rosnars. But I think, now I'll say this too, Templeton, I don't think he's a thief at all.
That's what I was going to ask you.
I don't think he's ever stolen a thing in his life. He's the ever looming shadow behind Val. Val has stolen stuff.
Oh yeah.
Templeton has watched him steal stuff. Templeton has made sure that he gets out of sticky situations. Templeton has never stolen a thing in his life.
Okay, I like it.
And I think, you know, bandit to me insinuates there's some muscle in there, or the act of hurting somebody physically, where like fencer or thief, Val's not interested in like hurting anybody physically. Monetarily, yeah, of course he'll take what he needs. That's like stealing a loaf of bread to feed your family kind of thing. But as far as like hurting people just to hurt people, no, I don't think so.
Mm-mm.
Okay. Next question comes from AK Random Ricker. So, as locals, you guys have any other friends you've left by the wayside? And do you guys have a favorite bar or tavern?
Yeah. So we actually talked about that. Like, we kind of hang out in the Yawning Portal. We are not really like big shots there, but we do kind of hang out. That's where the heavy hitters are going to be. That's where the information is going to be passed around. So we have talked about that. Like, that's kind of where we hang out. And
I know at one point, and I don't know if if this is not canon, because we have shared canon and I can't remember. I know at one point we kind of talked about that maybe our characters are like well known in this portion of Waterdeep as like if you've ever seen The Godfather Part 2, when the original Godfather, so like when they do the flashback to Vito's, as a young guy, when he's like walking down the streets and they're just grabbing fruit off of people's stands and everyone's like, "Oh, hey, good to see you, Godfather." Like, we kind of talked about like it'd be cool if like our characters maybe had a little bit of notoriety as working for the Rosnars, and like, not that we're like, kings of Waterdeep or anything like that, but like in our little section of the Yawning Portal where we hang out, we're known as like, these are the guys who work for the Rosnars. So like maybe they watch out for the locals kind of
maybe
thing.
The good question is the Yawning Portal the place for that to happen? As like a level 1 character, I imagine we're pretty low on the totem pole, so maybe there's another bar
that's where
that we can be up higher up in status where that stuff can happen. And I'm totally cool with like that being the bar. It doesn't have to be the Yawning Portal, right? It's cool.
Yeah,
but a place where we can come in and get what we want.
I would ask that it is a different place, because Yawning Portal, y'all are level 1 characters, so you guys, it mechanically fits that, you're not that big of a deal, because
I have 9 hit points.
You start scrapping with somebody, you're gonna die. So maybe if we choose a bar outside of Waterdeep, there's a billion, and you can just pick whichever. It doesn't matter. I think that'd fit better. Okay. Anybody?
But the second half of that question was, do we have anybody we left behind? Val was pretty close to his wife. So the Rosnar would be the criminal contact there, and the Rosnar family would be the only person other than Templeton, really. He's got some tertiary family that is out, not in Waterdeep, which I haven't written a backstory for, but there are people there, but they're not in Waterdeep.
So. Yeah, and I mean, Templeton had 2 people in his life, and the only one that's still living is Val. So there's not any locals. I think so. Maybe to kind of scale in the sense of like we're good for the community. Maybe there's like just a family or 2 that like we try and help support a little bit. Maybe at like Templeton's insistence or something like that. Maybe that's a better scope for a level 1 character. There's like a widowed woman and a child that we make sure has bread or something like that.
Perfect.
But so, yeah, that would probably be the only thing I could think of, is if there was like a local small family that Templeton had. Maybe it reminds him of his mom and himself had taken an interest in. He's insisting on making sure that they have food to eat.
So, Brewhammer, you 2 are the only 2 in the group that know each other. We'll get to that in a second. I do find this comment interesting from Brewhammer. Interesting that you guys are going to be locals in Waterdeep. I do feel like a lot of crews kind of are new
traveling
to
adventurers.
Waterdeep. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that'll be interesting. So do you guys have any lasting impressions you want to give real quick before we bring Travis back in?
I will touch on what AK Random Record said in the chat, was having ties to the community create awesome moments of roleplay. And I think that's totally true. Like, that's kind of why I wanted to be involved in Waterdeep, was just to have those points of contact where you can immediately riff off NPC because you have some sort of background story with them. And having Templeton at the side, I think that's just going to make it even better and easier transition into Waterdeep. I'd hate to be like a wide-eyed halfling coming into Waterdeep for the first time. Not that there's anything wrong with that. That's just we were that in Chult. I don't want to be that in Waterdeep. Yep. I want to be kind of I know the streets of Waterdeep, and to a certain extent.
To piggyback off of that, like, Waterdeep is the perfect setting to be a local who is lost as fuck. It is the New York City of Faerun, and it's the largest city in Faerun, isn't it?
I believe so.
I'm doing a bunch of reading on the background of Waterdeep in my spare time to prep for this, so that I understand Waterdeep. I want to be as close to being a true local as I can be at this point, and it will be super. Like, I love the idea of, this is all I know. that little town where I grew up, and then Waterdeep. Waterdeep is my world, but it's huge, and there's so much to learn and know about this city that like there's like this weird thing going on with like the macro and the micro of a world. It's awesome to hear that we're going to be in Waterdeep the whole time. I was kind of hoping that was the case. Like I like the idea of being buried into the city.
The pockets of Waterdeep are going to be so fun to explore.
I agree, and I think this is an appropriate time to bring everybody back.